I will teach you how to make money in real estate. That's what every guru is telling you for the past 10 years. And most of them, 99% of the people that are telling you this, they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to present a scam. There is something in this book called Freakonomics that's actually quite useful. And I want to discuss today real estate agents. And also to give you my background, I never sold a property, I just bought properties. So this is where I stand. I used an agent and I had a really good relationship with that agent. Would I recommend an agent? Well, let's find out. So, if you, in life, we love dichotomies, right? We love dualities. We love things that are black and white because that's how humans are. We love to categorize things. And for our brain, this means that we're spending less and less energy when we're seeing a thing, right? So, if something you can categorize it as evil, let's say weapons of mass destruction, your brain instantly classifies them in a certain category and you don't have to think, hey, should I use that item or not, right? It's kind of normal that you wouldn't want to use weapons of mass destruction if you're asking me. Some politicians might disagree, but that's beyond or beside the point. So, in real estate, and when you're talking about real estate agents, it's the same thing. You have the instance when you are selling a property and the instance when you are buying a property. And I want to argue with database from this book and from what I also know from my limited experience in real estate, that when you're selling a property is the worst thing to work with an agent. All you need to do is have a photographer or take really good shots of your property. If you're doing that, if your property doesn't look like a dumpster fire, and if you're patient enough and if you have the time, then it's a no-brainer to never use a real estate agent when you're trying to sell a property or when you're trying to rent for that matter. And I've had people that are close to me that they rent through real estate agents and through themselves alone. And by the way, when they're renting through themselves alone, typically they tend to be contacted by agencies or by real estate agents. But in that case, when they are not working directly with a real estate agent, because let me tell you how this works. An agent works with a fee, a percentage, right? So when you're selling a property, this is actually the whole idea. The agent gets 2% or something like that, maybe 5%. It doesn't matter. But typically, like in the market that I'm in, it's between 2 and 5%, right? So the idea is, what's the incentive for that real estate agent to push the price of the property higher? It's not that much. For a difference of 10,000 euros in a property, which might make a difference for you, the agent sees a very little increase, right? He wants the cash flow. He wants the property to be sold. That's the thing that the agent wants, and this is brilliantly explained here. And this is why I actually wanted to make this video, because this put in words what I thought in the past 2 or 3 years, that it doesn't make any sense to try and sell your properties through an agency, right? Buying, it's a very different story. But let me finish with the selling part. So there are pros and cons, right? The major pro is that you don't have to deal with people visiting your property. And that's where it stops, literally. That's where it stops, because from a seller's perspective, there isn't that much to do, okay? Fine, you have the legal paperwork, but you have to be there anyway. So a real estate agent doesn't do too much for you in that aspect. You are much better working with a notary already that can prepare those documentation for you, because that's what happens. The real estate agent doesn't do it for yourself. So when you're selling a property, there is very little incentive for the real estate agent to try and ask for a higher and a higher price, right? Fine, if it happens, cool. But in this book, it's being said that agents typically sell their own properties at 10% higher price, and it takes they typically stay 10 more days on the market, if I remember correctly. So the idea is they are waiting for offers for much longer. What real estate agents have and what you do not have is the knowledge of the market. And that's extremely important. But if you have an appraisal on your home, which you should, by the way, before selling it, I think that's actually legal. a legal requirement. You should have your home appraised. So it's not like you don't know the worth or the value of the property. And by the way, you can always go in your search engines. I won't tell you the local one, but let's say you're using Zillow or whatever, it's popular right now in States or in the UK. I'm not sure if things are still being sold on Gumtree or whatever, but still, the idea is that you can search for the houses that have been sold in that area in the past 1 or 2 months and have a really good feeling of what has sold. Typically, you won't see the initial listing prices, but you can compare it with the actual listing prices. And I can do that with my flat right now. And the thing is that I can see that it has appreciated by 10 or 15,000 euros if I would be to just look at the properties that are selling now. But actually, the last property that was closed in a very similar block as mine, in a very similar flat as mine, is actually a bit lower than that, right? So you have to not only look at what properties are available right now on the market, but also what has been sold in the past 1 or 2 months. But other than the pricing and the photos, those are the two things that you need to worry about. Pricing, photos, and yeah, okay, fine. Three, the visits. Those three things. If you can't do that, it makes no sense to hire an agent for you. I'm sorry to the agents that I know. I really am. And by the way, the agents that I know are great people. And I'm really, really sorry to say that, but it doesn't make any economical sense. In terms of buying property, this is where it makes sense to have an agent. And I will tell you why. First of all, as I was saying, the pro is, well, in selling, it's not, knowledge is not much of a pro, but in buying, having a person who has better knowledge of those properties than yourself is invaluable. It's the difference between paying 10% more on a property than it should. A good agent should have the incentive to wait until you find the right property. And why should she or he have the incentive? Because then you might recommend he or she, right? So this idea is only understood by the really good agents, by the agents that are smart. And this is why it's really tough to find a good agent. It's tough to find a person who's not after a quick buck. Because if they're after a quick buck, it's the same as with selling an apartment, right? The agent gets a percentage of your closing price. This is why, actually, if you can, and by the way, I should have started with this, but if you can have a contract which stipulates a fixed amount, let's say the agent gets $5,000, then it's fine, because guess what? The agent will not try to upsell you a property, and the agent also will not have the incentive of, okay, let's find a property because I don't even care. The difference is such a small difference that I don't even care if the guy pays 10 or 20 or 30 thousand more or less dollars, right? So when you're buying a property, that knowledge becomes extremely helpful. Your agent, again, hopefully he's accredited, hopefully he knows his stuff really well, hopefully he knows about engineering and civil engineering as well. But in that case, I would still recommend you going through experts and appraising the property, unless you want to revamp it completely, in which case you don't have to do it, right? So let's recap. If you're buying a property, what are the cons? Because I only told you some pros. Well, the cons are that this will add to your total, let's say, bill. But in the larger scheme of things, I do think that the knowledge that you're getting trumps the whole idea of, okay, paying a bit more for a real estate agent. By the way, I would also recommend you going to visit those properties with your agent. Do not let the agent do the job themselves. You're the only person who knows what you require. And another thing that you should have a list of 20 items or 10 items of the things that the apartment must have and what the apartment should have, or the house. It's the same thing, right? And give that to the agent. This way it narrows down so much the search. This is what I did, and Actually, he told me that he really appreciated that. It made his work much easier. I had a really good relationship with my agent, and he was really patient with me because I didn't want somebody to pressure me into doing something. You will still find a pressure, but um, see what my agent helped me was have more confidence when I was seeing properties, or have more confidence that I was not wasting my time. He would tell me if something was way off in the ad, or if something looked fake, or something looked too good to be true, or if there were any issues with that area specifically, right? So this is something that an agent can help you with, and I'm hoping that you're finding a good one. So for buying, I would still recommend going through an agent. I think that feels, first of all, you're perceiving it much safer, right? And it helps you sleep at night much better, which is an important part. Psyche is such an important part. Everything that we're doing in economics is based on behavior and based on how we feel about things. Like emotions, states are so important in economics, even though some people might disagree with that, but economics cannot exist in pure isolation. Uh, but if you are selling, you don't need an agent. You can do everything on your own if you have a little bit of time on your hands, and that's basically it. If you don't have time at all, then your only option is going through the agent. That's quite simple. But if you want to get the best out of things when buying, get an agent. When selling, don't get an agent. And yeah, do your research, use common sense. I think you all know that. Until next time when you hear each other, take care of you.